I just don't know how to make this PowerPoint for my moral philosophy class.
Well, sure you do.
Huh?
Well, first you should start off by asking yourself what the purpose of the assignment is.
Okay, well, it is about nihilism versus moral realism.
All right, and do you know the basic concepts of those topics?
Well, of course. Nihilism is about being wise and realizing there aren't magic, objective, moral facts, and moral realism is something silly some man named Plato studied.
Well, we can save that topic for another day. So, what is the function of this PowerPoint?
Well, that's easy. It's for me to share my knowledge with the class, but I'm not sure how to put my thoughts into the presentation.
Well, do you know how to work that machine with all the letters on it?
Duh.
And you know what the thought you want to express is?
Yeah, of course.
Well, then it appears to me that you do know how to make a PowerPoint presentation.
OMG, Socrates, you're right. You just had to remind me of what I already know.
Well, nothing is learned from simply being told how to do something. You just have to be asked the right questions.
Hey philosophers, I'm Shelbie.
And I'm Lilly, and now we're going to go over what you just watched and do some explaining, and we're also going to talk about Socrates and what he had to say about knowledge and his theory of recollection.
You may know that Socrates is notorious for claiming that he knows nothing. You might also know that he loved to play devil's advocate.
In the book The Meno, Socrates and Meno are having a conversation, or more of an argument, about whether you can learn to be virtuous or not.
Meno famously argued that you cannot learn something that you already know. And if you've learned something, then how will you know if you've got it right?
Well, that argument went a little like this. You can't try to figure out what things are.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
But are you sure?
I don't know. Ugh. The PowerPoint example that you saw just a few moments ago was a modern depiction of Socrates' reply to Meno, in which he uses one of Meno's slaves to prove his theory of recollection.
Now let's take a closer look at an example Socrates uses in the Meno.
In the example described in the Meno, it goes a little bit like this. Socrates is talking to one of Meno's slaves as he draws a square on the ground with a stick. He asks the slave boy to double the square that he sees on the floor. When Socrates asks the slave boy to double the square, what he means is double the area of the square that he sees. After looking at the square for a moment and thinking, the slave boy believes that he has it figured out. Let's say the square is 2 inches by 2 inches, assuming they used inches in ancient Greece, obviously. So Socrates is looking at the slave boy thinking, okay, let's see what this kid comes up with. As many people might think, the slave boy looks at the square and does a little thinking. Then he decides, okay, if we're going to double the area of this square, let's double the area of each side. However, that would get us 4 inches on each side. And 4 times 4 equals, well, not double the area of a 2 by 2, which is 4. And yes, we know that 4 times 4 is 16. But 16 is not double. So he's like, well, okay, I guess I did know that that would be wrong. So then the slave boy decides to try again. He's upset, but he's going to figure it out. Since doubling each side didn't work out the way he originally thought it would, he thinks, okay, now what if instead of adding 2 to each side and doubling the length, we add half of the length? So he thinks, okay, let's say if it's half of 2, then it would be 2 plus 1. right? Equals 1. So then we would have 3-inch sides, and 3 times 3 equals 9, which is still not what would be 8. So that's just not what we want. At this point, the slave boy is realizing maybe he really doesn't know how to double the area of a square. It's not what he thought it was, and he's not exactly sure where to go next. So Socrates decides to pull the knowledge out of his brain by asking him a question. He asks the slave boy, "How do you find the area of a square?" In response to this question, this boy thinks back to the basic facts he knows about geometry, and he says, "Well, yes, of course I do know how to find the area of a square. You would do one side times the other side." Basically, Socrates hears this sentiment and said, "Yes, of course you knew. You had to be asked the right question, though, to figure out that you actually did know that doubling the sides would not get you cubic inches of 8, which is what actually would be double the area of the square." So, Socrates shows him a nifty little trick. Within the next few moments, Socrates does show the boy that actually you find the double area of a square by using the diagonal of the square as a base. But this goes to prove that the boy really did know that doubling the sides would not actually double the area of the square. This example goes to prove that really, even though you might think you don't know something, you just need to be asked the right questions, and you realize you probably did all along.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Are you tired of being a lowly helot?
Why, yes, I am. I hate being someone's slave.
I understand, and that's why you should come down to Spartan State University, where you can learn everything from why it's all made out of water to why the earth is flat.
Really? I didn't know just a lowly helot like me could go to Spartan State University.
Now, it's a new concept, but if you come to our school, we can promise you that in just 3 short days, you could go from being a helot to a periokoi.
Really? I didn't know it was possible to raise my status here at Sparta State.
You know what? It is, so apply today.
And we're back.
Now that we've examined Socrates' slave example, we should probably dive into the theory of recollection.
Remember, the theory of recollection is Socrates' reply to Meno's claim that we cannot come to know things.
Correct. Meno thinks that we can't come to know things that we already knew or come to know new things. So, what exactly is the theory of recollection? Socrates claimed that before you were born, you had all the knowledge that you'll ever need. But the act of going through birth causes trauma on a baby's brain, causing it to lose all of its knowledge. And then, as life progresses on, certain questions remind us of the knowledge that we previously had. This proves Meno's point to be invalid, for it shows that we can come to know things. We just need to be reminded. Alright, so in conclusion, we've covered Socrates and Meno's argument about knowledge,
A silly example involving a PowerPoint,
Socrates' example including a slave boy, including the area of a square,
and the theory of recollection.
So we hope that you went against Meno's claims and decided to learn something new today. Thanks for watching.
Time to go home.
Time to go.
Wait, Lily, have you seen my keys?
Oh, have you checked your backpack?
Oh yeah, I forgot. I just needed to be reminded.